Very, very much to the program. We're on the air now, ladies, and welcome very, very much to Conversations. And in the audience, it's a pleasure to have two guests on this program. We're going to have a little piece of roll-in footage and so forth. But Alanna Hartzok, and she's the author of a new book called, you can see it displayed here on the table, it's called The Earth Belongs to Everyone. That's a beautiful title, and I think it's fair to say that her work is very widespread and very dedicated, and is largely anchored in much of the thinking, among others, but particularly Henry George and his view of economic theory and justice and so forth. And Alanna, welcome very, very,
Thank
very
you,
much.
Harold.
And Quisua Gonzalez, medical doctor Quisua Gonzalez, who is a Garifano,
Yes.
which is a distinct group of people. Some of you who watched the program remember last week we played Tish St. Hill, who was from there, but she's also a Honduran, and she's also very involved in the thinking of Henry George and looking at the condition. And she's just here. We caught her just before she's leaving the country. She's on her way in a day or two to the country of Venezuela to deal with certain kinds of work that's going to involve, if I understand, educating people to the importance of land value tax views of economic arrangement. Welcome very, very much to Conversation.
Thank you, Harold.
Alana, maybe you could, Alanna.
Alanna.
It's
Got it.
a beautiful name.
Thank you.
It should be right up in there with the goddesses of Yor. But maybe, am I correct? Both of you have known each other for a while, and both of you have been very singularly informed by the thinking of a major figure from the 1920s, early 20th century, Henry George. Am I more or less correct in that? And maybe you could start spelling it out, and it might be worthwhile you going into some of the ideas of this land value tax, or the basic theory that informs the economic thinking of him in a way that would have relevance perhaps even to our major decision makers at this time of crisis in the financial order. But am I more or less correct? You both are sort of tuned into Henry George.
And then we want to talk about how the work with the Prout, what's called progressive utilization theory. We're working with these two third-way economics.
Yeah, that's an Indian fellow.
Started by P.R. Sarkar.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it was informed
and you
Ravi Batra.
You have Ravi Batra on your program recently.
And a lot of other people have. And
that's right.
The institution you're going to be associated in Venezuela is with Prout.
Right.
So that's all good.
We're building this bridge.
But let's get the basics here, sort of.
Okay, and I will say also, if I may, that my role is as founder and co-director of Earth Rights Institute, a non-governmental organization. Quisua is our Latin American director for Earth Rights Institute.
Right.
And we're also both United Nations non-governmental organization representatives, so we've been meeting on that field as well.
You've been very busy. There's been so many speeches you've given in all venues all over the world. You've really been busy, young lady.
Well, I've been fortunate to be able to have work and travel combined and do good work. So now this phrase Earth rights, we mean both the rights of the earth to environmental and ecological integrity, and also the human right to the earth. That we have a birthright to the land and resources, to the gifts of nature. And that is very much, Quisua's been teaching, she might be talking about that at the Henry George School, about human rights and land rights. So this is core ethic that we're talking about.
Right.
And we know that our democracy was not founded on any fundamental economic human rights. So we had a political democracy lacking in the component of the economic democracy. So we're bringing this in as a fundamental ethic, if you will, based on what some call natural law, which is the human birthright to the planet.
That makes me think there was a lot of that coming out of the Enlightenment, John Locke, and a lot of things coming out of the Enlightenment that informed the Founding Fathers in the writing of our foundational documents, is the idea of natural law.
Yes, it did. And Locke said you can take as much land as long as you leave enough for everybody else. But in the world the way it is now, with so much privatization, there's about 5% of the population owns about 85% of the land throughout the world.
Throughout the world,
the
every
enclosures
political
and the concentration, that's right, and even worse than that.
And things that lead to that condition inform the international understanding of international economic structuring as well.
Absolutely.
We're off track in terms of basic grounding principles.
That's right. And then the buying and the selling of land that's limited commodity, you can't make more of it to keep the market, the price down like you can on a computer that gets better and stronger and cheaper.
Right.
So it's the both that a few own so much land, but then this land rent problem that the land value increases faster than wages.
Okay, now you're moving fast. And I wonder if we could back up a little bit. And also, I love the title of your book. And I sang your little song on the telephone last night, and I said the world belongs to everyone, and the best things in life are free. I like both of those, the idea, but it's not. It was the moon belongs to everyone, but the earth belongs to everyone is a very beautiful thought, and I've always associated that with Henry George. And I wonder if, just for the general audience, we could break. He was the major figure at the turn of the 19th century in terms of enlightened thinking about things economic. Mark Twain and Tolstoy and major figures, intellectual figures of that time, were relying upon him for a sense of progressive understanding of economics.
Yeah, so why don't we turn that to Quisua over, since she's teaching at the Henry George School.
Okay, in California?
No, I'm here in New York.
In New York,
Manhattan,
with Kai Hainer.
The Henry School, yes.
Give him my best, he's a great guy.
Thank you very much. And I have been for the last 10 years teaching at the Henry George School the fundamental ideas of Henry George.
Oh, good.
Which are based on what Alanna has as a title, the earth belongs to all of us.
If I may, should it be, I mean, because that's obviously not the case at the practical level.
No, but
every piece
this is as it should be.
It should have, the earth should belong.
Yeah.
It doesn't, but it should, and maybe it can again be that
By
way.
natural law it does, but we're not set up on fairness and justice. But
that's
if we
right.
were.
That's right. The natural law has never been able to implement itself in any practical reality in terms of history since the founding fathers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that is the reason what personally in my focus in teaching fundamental principle of economic of Henry George is to bring uprise the natural law. Because if we do not concentrate and try to vindicate the natural law, we're not going to fix anything in the economic sense.
That's a very interesting paradigm-setting notion, isn't it?
And behind that is the notion of, to individuals, the idea of right. And until we come straight up with what is the concept of right, just right, then we can forward and understand, have a clear understanding of what human rights are. And we all do have rights, but we all not receive the effectiveness of the validation of those rights. But first of all, we have to believe as an individual that we have rights, and for that we need to understand the concept.
Yeah. Eleanor Roosevelt, God bless her, was really instrumental in the Universal Declaration of, about 48, I think, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that there are rights. They're not just things that would be nice or something we might think about something.
Now, here's the limitation on that. Maybe you're going to go into that.
And you mentioned Locke before.
John Locke.
Locke.
Well, that was part of the Enlightenment. Hume.
Yes, but what he developed, his principle is based in very simple idea that we cannot go beyond that, and we cannot just erase that idea, which is, in order for us to have rights, we have first to have right to ourselves. And that is the fundamental, is the basic, the foundation of the rights.
As an unalienable right we put into our foundation, right?
And you see,
and that's sui juris and individual sovereignty.
Yes, because we are the owner of ourselves. And departing from that, how we can fulfill those rights and guarantee our life if we do not have the ownership of whatever we need to sustain our
ownership. Now, the word ownership came up then, and everything, and also the idea of sovereignty is usually we do say the sovereign state of New York or the sovereign nation of the America or Russia, or we put it in a political context for a political, and we don't usually hear people say the sovereign right of the individual. And can we have sovereign right of an individual, or would that just be hopeless runaway anarchy of people not knowing anything, because sovereignty is at the political level?
Well, the political level,
conceived that way largely.
The political level, meaning the interaction, the complete administration of the social interaction, the individuals getting together into society, then comes the manifestation of the political, which is the interaction, how to administrate the life of this group of individuals. But it starts with individuals, with the family that is the fundamental unit of society. Start with individuals forming their family and then interacting together, and then they start having their rights.
All right.
To operate.
That's right. It begins with the individual, existential and so forth. Each of us is a sovereign being. And that concept is one that tries to be informing our system, and it seems out of the Enlightenment.
So now we need a reflection of that in economic human rights. How do you take that and then say, what do you need to live to survive? If we assume that our individual sovereignty, well, then we're back to the rights to the land and the resources as our birthright. But you know, Cheryl, you're starting to mention, Harold, the Eleanor Roosevelt's work and the declarations of human rights that are foundational for international law. Food, shelter, clothing, education, health care, a job, employment. But you know, nowhere, true, do they mention the rights to the land and resources. At the time those documents were put together, that would have been considered, oh my gosh, that sounds communistic or something, you know?
The original writing is, we hold these truths, all men are created, they're endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Life, liberty, and property was the original writing.
The original, yes.
Was the original, but they took that out and put pursuit of
that's
happiness.
Right, so we need to...
Why did they take the property out, and how do we deal, or George deal, with the institution of private property ownership by an individual or a group in terms of the way the society is to be organized?
Well, he does it in a very elegant way, Harold. We'll take
he
both
was a
of us
great
talking
writer.
about
He was a really
beautiful
good
classic writer as well. He said that to have common property for all, our common property rights, it's not necessarily to have the state own land and resources, but it's necessary to understand how we can work with taxation policy and have correct taxation policy. Along with our human rights as individuals to the product of our labor, it would say, take taxes off of our wages, our productive efforts, our true contributions of goods and service. Let's untax those and say that belongs to the individual.
The taxes are imposed by a governmental agency that has sovereignty in the way the system's set up.
Well, it's
the government.
The idea of a democracy is supposed to be a people's government. We've lost that because of the lack of economic democracy. To get it back, we can elegantly work with taxation policy reform.
In real terms, at the Founding Fathers, I don't think we had slavery, certainly. We had no women's right to vote. It was not anything like what you would call a liberated or free order. There was maybe 10% of the population was serving the interests of, as always, the political leadership of any movement, including the one that founded our nation, was never just in any sense of all the people. So, I mean, the thing is, like, this should be, the earth should belong
to.
Right. People should be, and we should understand these things unless you can interpret individual sovereignty in some sort of a way that has meaning. I mean, we're talking about what should be, not...
Well, we see this as the next step for democracy. We even call it an earth rights democracy. This is a fundamentally different covenant between the people and their government based on the rights to the land and resources.
And that has to do with tax,
I want to go back to, I want to honor your
Okay.
question from a few moments ago. You said, what did Henry George propose? I said, first take taxes off of the good things, untax the goods, which is people's employment and production and efforts. Now, what do we take for the people as our tax base? And how does that... Wait. How do we do this common property or rights to the earth? We can maintain private use rights. So a private land title can be honored and should be. But that is conditional upon payment to the community. Essentially, we call it a land rent. It's like we're all equal rights holders in the land. If you have more or better land than somebody else, more high valued, you pay more land rent back to society.
Wait a minute, land rent.
Yeah, based on tax. It's a property tax on land value.
Okay.
Carol, it's real simple.
It's simple, but it's hard to grasp because it's so out of sync with the way things are.
Our property tax. Everybody understands property tax.
They can understand
it's too much on the buildings on your house. You fix up your house, your apartment building, you pay more tax. No, we got that part of the property tax we want to eliminate, reduce or eliminate. The other part of the property tax is the good part, and that is what we're all about.
I'm trying to understand it. I can't.
It's the tax on it's the land value. You take a tax bill for property. It's your house value and your land value.
I have to get some tutorial here because I can't. I've read the canon. I've read all
when you pay property tax, you'll get your bill and it says, here's how much your land value is, here's how much your building value is, your house. put those together, put a percentage, then you pay your property tax. This is a shift off of the individually created wealth of your house just onto the land value, which is socially created value. Everybody in society, New York is high land value because it's such a key location. So many people want to be here. It drives up the land value.
Yes.
That is a socially generated value, Harold. It is estimated to be 1/3 of GDP.
Yeah.
It's an enormous amount that's mostly privatized because the property tax is upside down and collects too little of the socially generated land rent.
Socially generated land rent. You're using words that I have a hard time understanding.
Yeah, the rent is the key, isn't it, Quisua?
Yes. Is it?
That is the one new word that you got to get to really get this. So
with
socially created means that, like, see, around this block there is a new building, a very high rise. And what might be the rent on that? What is the land?
If it's the penthouse, it'll be 5,000. If it's down, you know, if it's how many square feet you got,
and what might be the reason? Let's look into the reason to build that building.
Right.
It's because there is a demand for that, because a lot of people want to operate.
Okay, now we're talking supply, demand. I can understand that out of Adam Smith and elementary economics.
Location, supply, demand.
Right. And but what distinguish? I can't quite understand. I know you understand it, and it must be frustrating to somebody who's stumbling around like a child who doesn't understand a very simple thing.
This is the purpose we are here, because this is a new time.
And it's important
when people have to
relevant.
understand. What we're talking about is to understand and find a cause why the economic system is not operating. And the reason of that is because the burden is being thrown upon the fruits of the labor, the goods and income tax and all of that. But listen, today we cannot went back into the movement of economics because there is no job, and from where the government gonna have the public finance that they want if people are unemployed? They are seeking for funds to pay unemployment, and you see that is one side. But what happened? The land is still in use. There are businesses around the land, the
piece of dirt, a piece of dirt, or what?
I don't
understand.
It's a commercial need for operate the whole city, right?
You have to have everything on land, surface land. And that becomes increasingly higher value as any kind of development proceeds. Land value goes
that
up,
I can understand. But
that's all it is.
56 million square miles makes up the Earth territory of the Earth. There's so much land you can be on, and there's people there. And then there's resources. And then uniquely out of history, other creatures make things. Beavers make dams and everything. Worms make holes and that. And then, but it's the human species that had a unique 200,000 years ago. We evolved up the hominoid line, and we had a unique capability of extending our consciousness into the environment and making the environment other than, in an Eden-like sense, was the given context to which we were going to relate. So we had the ability to make a tool or make a technology, or to do something. The natural resources were all there. Everything was there as we were born into this, all right? They were all there, and then we have a technology, a capability of making the world different. So then I think maybe the first tool maybe was a club, and if somebody got the club, he could hit people on the head and make them do what they want. And throughout all of human history, it's never been, well, we don't know prehistory very well, pre-civilization very well. But for all of civilized history, from the pharaohs to Mesopotamia, to Rome, to the kings in England, it has always been unjust with somebody owning the power and the ability to control other people politically and economically, and they own the land. Now we have a few people who own, in every political economy, own not only the piece of land, a real estate value for a piece of dirt, but also they own all the capital instruments, all the capital value of what's been done through human capability. I can't quite see. You want to divorce the technology and human development from the land?
No, you see.
Like you can grow so much wheat.
Let's separate two things.
I can't get to it.
Okay, let me try to explain it to you, because you just said something that is exactly the foundation of the actual system. You see, for a piece of dirt, and it's not a piece of dirt. It's a location for human interaction to gather and do things that are important to pursue that happiness that you mentioned. Why they change property and put pursuit of happiness? Well, because those that change to remove the word property, they know that if people do not understand what really means the property in land and the property of their result, the products of their labor, they will just follow and accept like natural and normal the fact that they have to come after while others are accumulating the privilege, the excedent, their excedent of the unearned rent because they have the exclusive title for the use of that piece of dirt.
Right, from some sovereign entity.
Okay, so let's look at it this way.
They have latifundia in Latin America, and they had the estates in feudal Europe 1,000 years. You had hereditary thing. You had a fief, and you had a thing. A duke has the ownership of a particular entail or something, and there were so many pigs, so many chickens, so many cows, and so many serfs on the land. And if he loses in a crap game, the serfs just went along, and it was all owned by him. Not just the dirt, but the whole of the resources on it.
And we've been resourced by Dr. Michael Hudson's work as well. He's looked at 5,000 years, and he's looked at periods of clean slate or debt cancellation and land access. There'd be a new king. The new king wanted stability, and so the new king actually melted the clay tablets that the debts were written on. It was called the Sling clay. And when you have clean slates, you have debt cancellation, and you have land rights honored. You have a stable society.
Land rights for everybody?
Land rights honored for everybody. Those are periods. They do exist.
They're very vague in terms of the sweep and the pattern of history's injustice.
Well, I can't
by
go through
a power clique that always controlled.
Well, I'm just pointing out that
today. In the world today, it is a few people, bankers, who own all the assets, and a few people own all the assets. 1% own more than the bottom 90% of the economic assets in the world now. It's still just as unjust. It's more unjust and more disparity of income in the United States of America now than it was in 1789 France.
What my 80-year-old friend once said when I was just introduced to these ideas, giving a talk, she raised her hand and she said, "We all know this. What are we going to do about it?" And now we're here to tell you, believe it or not, we think there's something pretty important that can be done about it.
And it's important to understand the value tax concept.
Yeah,
I'm trying to understand.
Now, real simple. You're in New York. We're not back 100 years ago. What if you put in a new subway line?
Right.
What's going to happen to land values around there?
That will go up.
Who's going to get the advantage for it?
Well, there would be the people who own the bonds that finance the subway.
Well, after the bonds are paid off. Well, isn't it tax dollars? Isn't it all of us working paying tax dollars?
It does
might be paying for the infrastructure?
Well, you've had some development of claim on social organization by the governmental people. Politicians.
Okay.
So it would be able to
what we're saying is
tweet,
publicly financed infrastructure, libraries, schools, transportation, increase land value.
Increase land value.
And that increase means that those who own those sites can charge higher rent, or those who want to acquire use of those sites have to pay a higher price, which means they've got to go to those bankers, get out mortgages interest. They always got to pay more and more for the site.
Because the value is going up.
Yeah.
Well, that's the price of development, isn't it? I mean,
this is what's the flaw in development right here.
What is the flaw? How should it be done? We had a major critique. I don't think Henry George was in that, but it was Karl Marx. And Karl Marx looked at the capitalist movement, and he said, from each according to their ability to each according to their need. And that you could do, and he, if I'm not mistaken, he introduced that the evil institution that created all the injustice was the institution of private property. We should do away with private property ownership by anybody, put it all in the hands of the government in the name of the people, and then you could have it distributed by the nomenclatura and the apparatchiks and so on. It didn't work.
By the time Marx got to Das Kapital Part 3, he was in many ways a Georgist.
Oh, really?
And
okay, interesting.
He has statements in it's on our online course on land rights and land value capture.
Say it again.
The land rights and land value
and there's a
capture
link that
course.
We're going to let them know. Course, C-O-U-R-S-E.
Course.earthrights.net.
Let's do it again, if you don't mind.
Course.earthrights.net. .net.
Okay,
and I guarantee
I
guarantee you, Harold, if you take that course, and it wouldn't take you that long, you will get this.
Okay.
You're not going to get it maybe in 1 hour, but you will get it there step by step, and it's not rocket science, but it really opens up space.
That's exactly what we need at this time, don't you think? Where the economy is about to implode all over the place and everything. We really
we're looking
need
for a third way.
A new way of thinking.
And we're divided now between right and left. We've been so back and forth, Republican, Democrat. What we need is a real synthesis. And this is a synthesis. This is a true third way, new economics that's emergent because the time is right. And this is why she's headed for Venezuela.
Okay, that's really very good. And we'll go to the course and learn, so I won't have to stumble around with all these things that to you must seem, why doesn't he get it?
We have now about 500 people from 75 countries enrolled, and we've barely begun to advocate the course.
How long has the course been up online?
About a year.
Okay.
But we've just got it translated into Spanish. I mean, there's a translator for 40 languages, but that's the computer translator. We just now had a good translation into Spanish just in time for her to now be going to Venezuela.
Very good. And you're just on your way to go to Venezuela in the next day or so. You'll be there at what? There's an institution, a proud institution, or what? Other colleagues or something. Maybe you could share a little bit. Are you looking for? You've not been there before?
No, never. But the main idea is to take the advantage of the whole structure that the new government, the actual government in Venezuela has done, that is providing the recognition of people's right to the use of the land. Chavez has developed a decree that is a whole reform of the land, the agricultural land usage for agricultural purpose.
He's made land reform?
Yes. He has a whole decree that's become a law that is making available for people that doesn't have land, to peasants and people in the rural area, to go and use the land that is not being used. And if you see, it's not quite, because we are not talking about taking land from the people, but to put the land in use. And that is the sort of a small difference, slight but very big difference in what is happening now in Venezuela. We go in there to learn how they are operating and how we can show to them and teach and learn more about the land value taxation and create a more balanced society without having people feeling bad because they will feeling that they're being expropriated of land. Is not necessarily the expropriation of land. The taxation will push everybody if we just tax the land. And meaning the land, the resources, natural resources, and the vacancy in the cities and the vacancy in rural areas, to put it to work. And that is the right.
So what you're trying to encourage is the use of unused resources by making things available to the people.
That is the core
through a tax
of Henry
policy.
George. Yes.
Without changing
you won't
things.
hold idle land.
Yeah.
You couldn't. You would be paying more to hold it idle. Say a vacant lot in a city.
Yes.
You wouldn't be holding that for speculation. You would say, "Hey, I'm going to pay more tax on the land. I better start putting some nice buildings on there, or sell it to someone who can." And this is what then drives the restoration of the neighborhoods, the elimination of slums. The whole turnaround starts right there in getting the land tenure and tax policy set up on essentially a natural law, an understanding of natural law that serves everybody.
Has this been applied anywhere on a national basis?
If you go to the online course, we've done analysis of 15 countries that have had experience with this to varying degrees, including 18 towns and cities in my home state of Pennsylvania. So the evidence,
18 of those
18
are
towns and
counties
cities
in Pennsylvania.
Towns
I'm talking
and
about
cities.
a sovereign nation, nation, Germany, for Spain, France, or something. Is there anyone with a major, or has there been a major political leader in the modern experience that avows these principles that are revolutionary, but also able to be dealing with the past situation as well?
Well, one reason we're optimistic about, I mean, we can go back to Winston Churchill, and we can go back to people from right and left who advocated strongly for this policy.
And the policy
advocated for land value taxation.
Land value taxation. I'm really sorry, I can't
There's
understand
a whole list
it doesn't matter what's
of quotes in the online course that will tell you what these people have said.
But there's no nation that's based on this land value taxation now.
Maybe Venezuela.
Maybe,
Venezuela,
because he's a revolutionary.
Venezuela is taking the resource rent from the oil and returning that for social goods. So that's already part of the paradigm. The surplus profits surplus profits from Marx or unearned income from Adam Smith. He's capturing that surplus profit to oil, giving that for social goods. Now, we're just here to talk about
the government
how you can do it on land value, surface land value.
Okay, that's a different thing.
It's a proper function for economic democracy of government's the right way to tax.
Well, what's the difference between that and a government taxing and then taking the thing and distributing it through public institutions, like setting up schools and things? Then the government taxes, gets the money from the people who produce it. Let's say BP makes a lot of gas and oil. They get a lot of oil and they sell it on the market, and then they tax them, and they're able to tax them because of the political realities. And then build up a public sector activity by the people who are oriented in that way. There's a lot of that going on, right?
Taking the surplus from extractive resources,
or from any
rather
activity,
than have it be privatized through exorbitant private profit, is in line of what we're talking about.
Wait a minute, it's going to be what? Say it again, could you? I couldn't. Look, you've got private sector, you have public sector. Yeah. That's what we argue about. And that's Republican, Democrat.
The private
sector
whole world simply needs to pay a fair fee to society for the land and resources.
Well, why? Let's stop talking about land and resources, if we could, for a minute. They have to pay taxes because they are earning. They have to pay taxes because a political entity forces them to pay taxes in order to finance government activity for the public good, like public schools, roads, and that kind of thing. That's going on all the time. What's the difference? Why just the land? I can't understand
remove the
all
land
the resources.
Because without that, the wealth gap grows. And, you know, taxes has fallen on working people. There's no longer a progressive income tax. It used to be income tax did fall on monopoly asset ownership.
Well, they're worried
it's gotten onto wages.
Well,
so this is what's crushing the middle class. And what we need to do instead, we can take all these big money and they go to offshore banking and offshore island countries and so on. You can't take the land and move it. This allows the people the transparency. Yeah. We can have it on websites. Who owns what land where? Are they paying a fair fee back to the common fund for the land?
The common fund goes in. Why is the common fund? Why not? Why isn't the common fund, as you use it, is it some sort of entity or something?
It's
or
just
is
a tax
it not
base.
The government of the United States? The common fund is the taxes received. So why not just say it's the government of the United States taxing the private sector?
Do you remember that you corrected? You said this is not a done deal, but should be. The earth should
all of this it's idealistic.
Well,
I like that, but I don't.
It's not idealistic. It's the origin of the world. It's the origin of the connection of human beings to the earth.
Thank you. Began with the club, which was used as a weapon to.
Well, you know, that's a very male model, Harold.
Yes,
I have to call you on this. Maybe
it began. If you want
maybe it began with the breast.
Maybe
it began with the nurturance of the women during the times when we did have women have stronger roles before patriarchy. Maybe there was a time of sharing and cooperation and the kind of Kelsonian cooperatives and worker ownership of capital, that kind of sentiment that comes from feminine consciousness of how we're all interconnected.
Well, yeah, but it's a very it is. It has
Thank you, Carol. That's right. It is. Okay, we're going to.
It's a narrow read in terms of depending upon that, because there hasn't been any expression of it in any historically relevant way.
It's been suppressed.
It's been suppressed. They didn't even let you all vote until 1920. Listen,
I know, we all couldn't vote till
1920, and everything's going to hell. We should maybe take the vote away from the women, right? Is that right?
We should
take the vote away from these uppity women. You know, this feminine principle.
Thank you for honoring us with
I'm making
being on your show and giving us this opportunity to give our very female voices out to the world, which so desperately needs it.
I like that. If you may, no, I think it's really good, but I think they ought to be. If I may, I take it seriously. I'm a comprehensivist and everything, and I'm trying to understand this land. I think they should stop talking about gender so much, like they talk about a woman or a man. I think they should be talking. Well, that's part of humanity, but it operates.
Just bringing up that club kind of took me there, Harold.
No, I mean, well, no, but but no, they should be talking about male and female functions in universe, because everything in universe is either compression or tensional integrity. Everything is molecular. Everything is on two things. You know, so they should be talking about male and female function in universe.
In balance, in harmony.
And that you have a thing going through the tensional integrity. You could have stayed back 600 million years ago. We could have stayed as unicellular spongiform that all fauna was. We could have just stayed there. But there was an impetus that goes through it.
There's an evolution of consciousness.
That impetus going through it is a male function. The thing where they would be saying, well, this is cool, 600 million years ago. Let's make some curtains and make it nice. That'd be a lady. They do that, and but the impetus to change, to go through it, that's what we're looking for. Something that can go through the whole, inform the whole, and liberate the whole. At this time, the whole evolution of consciousness, we may be on the verge of emerging as a new relationship in a species term to the universe through punctuated equilibrium, because we've come to an existential new reality at this particular time in which we live.
Well, there's a consciousness behind this, and I think we're finding the language to talk about it. When we have this concept, it actually comes from a consciousness that understands the connection, all connection of life.
Well, that's a Gaia-like thing. I love the idea of Gaia. Lovelock, I love Lovelock.
That essentially we're many different expressions of a oneness. I mean, it's kind of taking the understanding that the Creator created all of this and all of us.
Yeah, but
and it's bringing creative back, and that we're parts of the Creator, and so it's our job here to be creative in our societies.
Right,
we form our societies. Right. We want to inform our societies based on the high consciousness of the interconnections.
That's a value judgment of saying it's this or that. The thing is, it's a synergistic universe. Everything's synergetic.
Well, it's the same as we're saying.
You realize, if I may, I don't want to go off on it, but we've come to, with 200,000 years, that's how long we've been here as a thing up the hominoid line. And with 10,000 generations, and this is the defining generation. This generation is the defining generation. And Joyce said history is a nightmare of injustice, as we went up that thing 10,000. And this is the one. And we're coming to a point where we have the extension of that, the club, or the extension of the land value, or whatever you're doing, or however you're organizing it. It's always been unjust, everything. But the extension of that is a unique quality in the evolution of consciousness. And we've got to the point now where the leading edge of that has been at the service of political entities that get weapon systems so they can conquer other people, build their tribe, get their tribe strong. Realpolitik, it's still operative.
Yeah, this is a breakthrough we need. I just want to say that last chapter on my book is The Economics of War and Peace, presented at Economists for Economic Justice and Peace at a conference here in New York a few years ago. It goes through all these graphs and diagrams, just what you're describing, but the last part of that is how we take that and turn it so that governance is truly now in the service of the people. And
well,
this is what we're bringing to the table.
Wait a minute.
Otherwise, we're going to destroy ourselves.
What has happened throughout history that makes this time, what is the event at a level of the evolution of consciousness, or at a large comprehensive level, that makes this unique to all of human history in a way? And I think you can put the date right around 1970. Before 1970, nothing that is possible to us in a liberated, just way, in a comprehensive way, was possible in terms of the technological development and extension of consciousness affecting the environment. So what is it that made that possible? Existentially, we reached the point where those weapon systems that we've been used to gain power for one tribe against another and steal their grain and rape their women and all the rest of it, like we've been doing throughout history, all unjust and that sort of thing. They've reached a point where that's when they've become species lethal.
Yeah, and Einstein saw that.
No, that's different than ever. Mm-hmm. When we get, please bring it, and also please bring that. Oh, yeah, okay. And could you let me know the time? I forgot to get the time going, okay? Okay, Fred? Anyway, they've been that, and that's also the time that we very well may have transcended material scarcity as an ontologic reality for the first time. That there is now enough for all because of ephemeralization. So the intellectuals are falling down. It's not the political.
Well, it's back again at the distributive. We produce, but we're not distributing it.
Exactly.
Casey had her hand up, so let's go.
Yeah, it calls my attention. Just want to quote on what just happened here among us. You were very excited because first you were saying, I do not understand the land value taxation.
I don't.
I wonder, and I don't. But when we come to talk about consciousness, and when we fall into, you are more relaxed and you are more into yourself, and that is precisely what we're talking about. And my contribution here is to say, we need to bring back humanity to the humanity senses, to the spiritual part, the consciousness of themselves in connection with that earth, the planet that gave life to them.
Okay.
That Mother Earth.
I understand. I think that we have a DVD they're thinking of playing that is done, and let's see if we can get that up. I hear it, but I don't see it on the screen, and it just shows the injustice. And can we see the picture on the screen? We hear the sound.
This is a trailer called The End of Poverty.
In a world where there is so much wealth, with modern cities and plentiful resources, how can we still have so much poverty?
How is it that in countries in which there is growing wealth, there are actually more poor people than there were before?
Many people will have to suffer. Many people will have to be forced into homelessness, landlessness. Some will have to die because we are following a particular economic model.
Sub-Saharan Africa is paying $25,000 every minute to northern creditors. I think people don't understand that it is actually the South that is financing the North.
Tenho 6 filhos, e o que eu ganho aqui, se eu for comer tudo aqui, eu vou para casa sem nada.
Toute une série de politiques qui sont appliquées dans les pays du Sud endettés sont dictées à partir de Washington.
Now, what was particularly flawed about a lot of these theories was they did not lead to economic growth, and yet they pursued it. And my interpretation is because Wall Street wanted it.
Okay, I can say life in the slum is very hard. Okay, sometimes we do go without even eating supper now.
Mientras haya gente que no tenga agua para beber, su suerte, su estabilidad es frágil.
Less than 5% of the world's population live in the United States. We are consuming over 25% of the world's resources.
D'ores et déjà, on dépasse, en moyenne mondiale, on dépasse d'environ 30% la capacité de régénération de la biosphère.
This system is an absolute failure.
From the tape, I think that the Schachenbach, a very major institution for Henry George, End of Poverty, I'm going to hold it up here, and this was a trailer from that, and you're on the board of that.
Yes, I am.
And that's
on the board.
An institution that promulgates Henry George.
Financiated the idea, and this is to, to in this modern time start a conversation on what is the impact of the use of the land, and by having people more closer to how it looks.
Let me ask you, if Henry George was here at the turn of the century, Tolstoy, and that, why hasn't Henry George been the means by which our economic order nationally and internationally is set up so that we don't have the problems that we have? Why has it not been able to establish itself?
Well, one place you're going to get some answers is a book called The Corruption of Economics. And while Henry George did represent an advancement of the science of political economy, of Adam Smith's work, he got a handle, Henry George did, on the wealth gap. Who do you think was a threat by that? Those powers that are to the advantage of the system the way it is, actually paid emerging schools of economics at Columbia University, University of Chicago, and elsewhere to actually create neoliberal economics. Now, George's economics, as was Adam Smith, is based on land, labor, and capital, 3 factors. Labor, human beings working on land and resources, create the capital. The capital is a tool. But it was obfuscated because land became a subset of capital. Under neoliberal economics, there's just the 2 factors.
Right.
This I consider to be I consider to be the intellectual crime of the 20th century.
Right.
Very serious what they did. So there was a real intentional campaign to put aside Henry George. Even now, if he's mentioned sometimes, oh, that's agricultural economics, just because it mentions land, is a totally incorrect understanding of Henry George.
Because people don't have an understanding of
what's important. To answer you quickly,
yeah,
there was a propaganda campaign against these ideas, Harold, and it created enormous suffering.
Right. Okay, that's one way of seeing it. Everything, that kind of thing, and I understand what you're saying, and I think I agree with you. I don't blame it was political, and what you have built up is you have vested interests in an economic and political and order, and so you have vested interest in that. We're confronting that now. Did you see the things they're suggesting for, the Simpson and so forth? Now for confronting what's going on in the United States now. We're going to have all cut back on everything because of the debt and all of that. And so, I wouldn't blame the politicians for it. I would blame the intellectuals. I think it's the intellectuals in general that have fallen down on the job in terms of providing a truly comprehensive understanding of what it is that's going on in universe comprehensively. They divide everybody up into special. They have a saying that war is too important to be left to the generals. Economics is too important to be left to the economists.
And thank heavens, that's why the schools of Henry George have been kept alive. For that very reason, that's why we are here today.
Yeah.
Because some wealthy people did create funds because they wanted to have a fair society, and they created the Henry George School and the Schachenbach Foundation. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't that there was a continuation of this thread of wisdom up to today.
Right.
And we really must also mention a local organization here in New York called Common Ground.
Common Ground.
And you should really get some of those people on there, because Common Ground has really crunched the numbers on this policy for New York City, and something like over $1 trillion, right, Kezia, of land value in New York City. Properly tax that land value, New York would be totally solvent, and all the basic needs for services for New York would be met without taxing the good things like housing and people's productive efforts, and all these waitresses around the city having to pay wages on their low income. Well, we would untax all of that, increase purchasing capacity, which is again along the lines of Prout, increase purchasing capacity, have workers have more power, more housing affordability based on land price affordability. And you're a Californian, you want to have worker ownership of capital. This is absolutely crucial to allow labor to have the power to push for ownership and cooperatives ownership of capital,
One
which
would
is
ask,
also what Prout does.
Why haven't they? They haven't because they're all enthralled, or the left, or what is it? Would you count yourself progressive? They have progressive and then retrogressive and that. And progressive, I don't know, or leading edge and everything. But again, it's all down to where they have they don't have comprehensive vision. Comprehensive vision is vision that it begins with the big. And it's like Einstein with the big, rather than specializing on one aspect of something that can be done. And they've divided the intellectual community up. Fuller was one. There were some others. Prout might be. I don't know Sarkar real well. But they divide everything up. They divide everything up into specialization. They've completely co-opted the intellectual community by specializing that they're going to become a specialist in the use of, I use the example, the pluperfect tense in 13th century poetry in the south of France, or land value in New York City, or some small
Harold,
thing, rather than taking over the overview.
Please
Where
appreciate
are the sources
that the overview is here before you. Okay?
Where? I don't see it. All
We're putting together a very big picture, which is P.R. Sarkar's progressive utilization theory. Progress is using the material plane for the advance of mental and spiritual expansion. And we're bringing the Georgist economics around land tenure and taxation policy with the Prout vision of cooperative ownership of capital, and the kind of things that's really happening in Venezuela in a large degree. We're very excited that they're trying to pioneer a third way.
Okay.
And we also understand that there's a holistic integration here from local to global. When we talk about New York, we're not talking about New York's tax policy separate from the need for regional regional and national, and a global resource agency. We have proposals for those kinds of innovative new agencies. We have a very holistic picture. We can't roll it all out in an hour, although we're thankful to have the time to be here.
Yeah, and I'm going to go to
course.earthrights.net.
And I want to come to where I can understand the essence of this land value system of thinking that has so much to do with dirt.
And you have the Henry George School. Maybe when Kizzy comes back from Venezuela in 2 months, you could take her course.
Back in 2 months.
She'll be back in 2 months. She'll start up teaching the courses. The Henry George School of Social Science here.
I'm glad they're there.
Lectures and seminars. It's another way to really get this. I took it in 1978 in San Francisco at the Henry George School
there. Yeah, they have it out there too.
And Howard, I was trying to understand the reasons for poverty, the wealth gap. As a young woman, I was trying to understand the root causes of war, so many big picture things.
They're still in front of
5 weeks. And the light bulb went on
good.
so big, I dropped. Well, both of us has minimized the careers we were trained for because we have been so enlightened by this economics approach. She is a medical doctor, myself as a highly trained psychotherapist. We have minimized those careers and we have moved ahead on this because we think this is the big picture we want to have dedicated our lives to.
I can't find out who's it associated with. Is it Henry George?
Who is what?
Who's associated with the overall comprehensive vision? Like I would say,
well, I could explain it from this side.
I would put forth Fuller. He's the best mind. I would put forth him. There are a few McLuhan was really good on. James Joyce was really good on understanding things and not going into any of the spiritual stuff. The spiritual stuff think they know how the universe is set up. We're in it. We have to understand things just materialistically. No spiritual values about gods and things like that. You can't have that for an ultimate thing. It's within the materialistic world and bring up an alternative materialistic reality of evolution that is qualitatively transformed this moment from all of history. Where is it? I can go to Fuller. I can't find it in George.
Well, you haven't searched enough.
I can't find it in Marx.
Because George is Marx does not have an understanding of consciousness.
He was a
Henry George did, and P.R. Sarkar and Prout does. So there is an understanding
I know Ravi Batra well. I've read it,
and
I think he's got the idea. There's 4 different people, and it's coming out of the Vedic. I think the Vedic is a system people came up with to get some idea of self-reflective consciousness. I'm talking about materialistic, out of enlightenment thing. Who are the leaders of it? Comprehensive, not some detail.
Henry George and P.R. Sarkar. Go ahead.
I will say the leaders are gotta be you, her, and me, with the conscience of who I am and for what I'm here in this earth. And I don't think that we just have to rely on who is giving you the last word, because in the past we have those authorities that recognizes precisely this, what we're talking about, like Adam Smith, Stuart Mill, Ricardo, Herbert Spencer. They establish the main ideas that you're asking for.
But
here comes to me again, ideas. And what are ideas? Are the manifestation of the spirit, the part of the spirit.
What spirit? What is spirit? What are you talking about when you say spirit?
Who you talking?
Yeah, but what do you mean spirit?
Pure consciousness. Who is watching the show?
I think you don't
It's simple. It's very close.
That is.
That's a synergy. There's a synergy. You can understand
of your material body, your energy, and the consciousness.
The universe, and even more than that, it is thermodynamics hold, because we are probably, the string theory says, we are in parallel universes. Thermodynamics hold. We have entropy going on the gradient of evolutionary process.
Yes, and after the material part of our body disappear, what's left?
Well, that's something that people have talked about.
But you're asking us about spirit.
Synergy.
No,
and I'm telling you,
putting off any control. I want to deal with it only in terms of understanding things materialistically, nothing to do with any God or spirit
we
or
haven't
love
spoke about
or
that.
Justice or any of those things.
Not
just
justice?
Material. No, none of those things, because they've just been used as a sop for the people to keep the system in place that is unjust.
Well, you want something practical and scientific.
We are denying that, because when we think that we are hungry, just so simple like that, the first motivation is I'm not seeing it. I have to have the feeling first, in order to see it materialistic way, because I have to choose within me what I want.
It's got nothing to do with the individual.
It has to do with the individual.
No,
it's how you manifest yourself.
The problem, with all due respect, is comprehensive vision. I don't see it in Sarkar. I don't see it in George. I don't see it in Kelso. I mean, that's something that informs it. But people like Fuller, that's different. That's really comprehensive without going to the comprehensive things that gave solace to self-reflective consciousness in Cro-Magnon caves.
Did he have
religion, where there's a God, or there's justice in the universal society.
Did Bucky Fuller have a comprehensive understanding of how you have an economic system so that everybody's basic needs for food, shelter, and clothing are well met, along with having freedom of expression for mental understanding and development?
I think he had a good way.
Did Bucky Fuller have an economic
but that's not the problem.
I don't think he did.
That's not the
I
main
don't think
problem.
he did.
That gets down to your thinking.
I think he would have welcomed these ideas that we're talking about. I think Bucky Fuller would have been extremely open-minded and affirmative, and if he'd known about it, he would have included it. But
let me ask
not
you
everybody can do everything.
Okay, we've gotten to the point where he proposed he's the only one, and I take Kelso and all this stuff within that context, that we've got. How are we doing on time? 2 minutes. Okay. He's saying that he did a chart of just materialistic, no gods, no spirits, no justice, no truth, no love, none of that stuff. He just said that we were evolving.
I want to go to another planet. We're going to another planet, Harold.
No, he said, well, perhaps so, but we're on this planet and in this universe.
Other than yours, Harold.
That we were.
Harold, you don't want love on your planet?
No, don't.
Are you kidding me?
Don't resort
Where are you
to
going
that.
here?
It's synergy. It's the behavior of systems unpredicted by the sum of the parts. There's nothing but resonance.
Interconnection.
No, yes, that's right.
Interconnection.
But it's done in time, and you've gotten to a point now in a materialistic reading of things where the weapons now are species lethal. Not a single human being would survive. Okay, that's new, okay? Now, on the opposite side, what has changed that makes possible something, maybe the end of time or something, that makes possible a liberation rather than the annihilation of the human species that is threatened now? What has changed materialistically that has changed? We have transcended. This is something that never comes up. We, collectively, as a society within an ecological order and within the universe, have transcended material scarcity as an ontologic reality is never mentioned. Never mentioned. The situation has changed from Henry George or from Karl Marx or anything. History is a nightmare. We've changed. We need some vision at that level and we cannot know. And if you're in the womb and you're coming into a new way of being, you can't know what that is. That's what we're lacking.
Let's just make this really basic. The military system continues because people are paying taxes into payments for the military system to continue.
Okay, let me
We are making that happen. Yeah. And again, we are back to this very core issue of taxation policy.
There you go.
Which neither Kesey or I would be interested in, but now we see as crucial.
Okay, and now if we get the dirt done tax right in New York, everything's going to be all right. Let me ask you a question. Do you think... Are you optimistic, pessimistic? Do you think we're going to destroy our species? There are probably systems out there in the universe that have reached the point where they cannot allow for the realization of a transference out of history materialistically to where there's enough for everybody and the ecology that's never been till now. They can't realize that or bring it up or model it. Or do you think we're going to destroy it? Are you optimistic or pessimistic for the evolution? For the human prospect and evolutionary process in this part of this universe, which might be in the world parallel universe.
Harold, I am cautiously optimistic. What are you, Kezia?
Very optimistic.
I don't know. I think the money could be put, as far as I look at it, I think without the vision, which there seems not to be, of how we can do things, we're probably going to blow it up. I think we're probably going to join entropy.
I think it depends on what each of us does each moment of each day, because we are each sovereign powers. So our intention...
We're not sovereign, we're serfs within a system that's all controlled by a few people who own all the capital assets, including
Then why
the land.
don't you just stay in bed all day, Howard?
No, because I got to change it. And we got to learn it. Land value taxation policy.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, enough of all this.
Get
out of here.
Thank
Have a wonderful trip.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to send you a link to this program.
Okay,
you watch it in Venezuela and let me know.
Absolutely.
You promise?
Yeah, I promise.
On maybe The Channer. Maybe.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Sonny, for coming.
Thanks, Howard, so
Okay,
much.
strike this out. We got another program to do. Okay.